Clearly this video is a little bit different than normal, not just because I've dressed for the occasion, but because of what we're talking about right next to me. The Rolls-Royce Black Badge Wraith started at $330,000 and as equipped is $461,000. That's the one that we're looking at today. In my mind, cars fall into a few categories. There are rational purchases like a RAV4 or a CR-V or perhaps a Toyota Camry. And then maybe you have a stretch goal car. You say, if I get that next promotion, if I have a little bit of extra cash, maybe I'll buy a BMW 3 Series next time. And then maybe you have an aspirational goal. You say, if I really make it big in business or I get that extra promotion that I really wanted, maybe someday I'll buy myself a big black Mercedes. And then there are dream cars, like this Rolls-Royce right here. These are the cars where you say, maybe if a really rich relative dies, I could buy myself a Rolls-Royce one day. Maybe if it turns out that I'm really related to that Saudi prince that keeps emailing me in my spam folder, maybe I could get a Rolls-Royce like this. So in this video, let's go down the rabbit hole of what it's like to live like a king for a weekend. The first thing we need to do, of course, is remove the coat because this is a Black Badge Wraith, and the Black Badge lineup at Rolls-Royce is theoretically for a slightly younger, slightly chicer audience that prides themselves on a little bit more customization, the blacked out accents that we find on the outside, and a tiny bit more power under the hood. Also, theoretically, Black Badge vehicles are designed for a slightly younger audience, perhaps right like me. I know, don't quit your day job, right? Although, strangely enough, this is my day job, imagine that. Up front, we have LED headlamps, just as you'd expect in a luxury vehicle, and we have this enormous Rolls-Royce grille. Surprisingly, this is still a metal grille. You can really hear it. And these slats, also metal. I'm sure all of you will let me know if you can think of other vehicles that actually have metal grills still down there in the comment section below, but the list is incredibly short. So if you're looking for a lot of tradition in your next opulent vehicle, clearly Rolls-Royce is the way to go. No Rolls-Royce would be complete without a Spirit of Ecstasy on the hood. This one is, of course, powered, so if you lock the vehicle, it descends down there into its little vault, and if you unlock the car, it pops back up. You can also raise and lower it inside the car in case you decide to go shopping at Macy's and you don't want those Macy's people to see your Rolls-Royce logo because you want to get that deal that's not available at Saks Fifth Avenue, then she will descend away, and she also has an anti-theft feature, so if you were to try and grab her, she would drop down there into her vault as well. If it wasn't already obvious, the Wraith is a really, really big luxury car. This is over 207 inches long. This is longer than a Chevy Tahoe, and interestingly enough, it's also heavier than a Chevy Tahoe. I think that's why even though we have these elegant 21-inch wheels here on the Black Badge model, they look a little bit small on the car in some ways because the car itself is just so big. We also have these very distinctive suicide doors up front. They are also power doors, so there's a little button here on the inside we'll take a look at later. You can press that button to power close the door. Of course, if you're on the outside, you have to actually close the door yourself. As you'd expect out of an ultra luxury vehicle, there are a ton of options on this particular car. Among them are the paint, the pinstriping, the matching pinstriping on the wheels, etc. Rolls-Royce really prides themselves in the level of customization offered to their customers, and that really is quite different than a typical luxury brand like Mercedes, for instance. If you had a tree that died in your backyard and had some really great memories attached to it, and you went to the Mercedes dealer and said, I would love my new $250,000 Mercedes-Benz S-Class to have wood from this tree on the inside, the Mercedes dealer would laugh at you, but the Rolls-Royce dealer would simply ask how deep your pocketbook is. So now's a good time to talk about what this car has on it. I have the window sticker right here. The Black Badge package is $50,000. That's on top of the $330,000 where the Wraith normally started. That gets us the blacked out trim there. The illuminated door sills that say Wraith, those were at $6,000. The interior is $5,600 for the bespoke interior. We then have this paint job, which is absolutely gorgeous. I really love this blue. It's sort of a teal, I guess you would say. This particular color, $11,900 extra. The pinstripes on the car, $2,400. The Shooting Star headliner that we're going to look at in a bit, $17,500. And then the Rolls-Royce monogram on the headrests, that is an extra $1,450. The outer two-tone steering wheel that we're going to take a look at in a bit, $3,200. And the bespoke audio system in this car, $10,000. Driver assistance package, which includes the forward-looking infrared camera and the radar adaptive cruise control, etc., $8,325. Then we add destination handling, gas guzzler, etc., to bring us to $461,250, obviously before tax, title, and license. Restrained opulence is probably the best way to think of Rolls-Royce styling. They don't go for anything kitschy, they don't go for anything truly exotic in terms of styling. There are no pop-up spoilers in the back, there are no crazy wings anywhere, even though we do have over 600 horsepower under the hood. Instead, this Rolls-Royce is all about elegant shapes. So we have this fastback profile that I think is absolutely gorgeous, and then the rear haunches end in these tail lamp modules mimicking the theme that we saw up front. The tail lamp modules have a very simple design to them, all red right there. And then down below we have dual integrated exhaust tips, but behind those dual integrated exhaust tips live 6 actual exhaust outlets from the exhaust system. That's definitely excessive. The Wraith may be big and the Wraith may be heavy, but it is also very, very fast. 0 to 60 happens in 4.3 seconds thanks to a 623 horsepower turbocharged 6.6 liter V12. This engine sends all of its power to the rear wheels only via a ZF 8-speed automatic transmission. I'm a little bit surprised that we don't get all-wheel drive in the Wraith, but the logic here is that the Wraith is supposed to be a little bit sportier than the average Rolls-Royce. Even though this still feels like a Rolls-Royce out on the road, it definitely has a little bit more of an edge than perhaps a Phantom. Fuel economy is not likely to be high on the priority list for a shopper looking at a Wraith, but in case you're interested, this one comes in at 14 miles per gallon combined. The interior is as opulent as you might guess. I don't even have to close this door myself. There's a button right up here that I can press to close that door. I simply press that, and that door swings in right like that. I can also close the passenger door via that button up there. It's a little bit difficult to show, but the Starlight headliner that we find in modern Rolls-Royces really is one of the trick features that we see here. This features shooting stars that run across this headliner at night, and we have little fiber optic ends. That's how this works. So they are actually poking through the perforations in the leather, allowing you to see that light. It's enabled and disabled via this button that looks an awful lot like a moonroof button, but that's what turns the Starlight headliner on and off. One thing that surprised me a little bit is that these front seats are not as adjustable as some luxury cars out there, so we don't have inflatable bolsters or extending thigh cushions or anything like that, but everything in here is coated in oodles and oodles of leather. This one has this custom leather option in here. You can see it's sort of teal leather. It kind of matches the pinstriping going on outside. I was a little bit unsure about this design at first, but I have to say it's really grown on me. And even though it's not exactly restrained, I definitely think it has a very elegant look to it. The stitching detail is incredible in here. When we take a look at the stitching, for instance, over here on the dashboard, you'll notice it's not just a straight line. They're all at slight little angles to give it a little bit more visual interest. The climate controls are also pretty unique. These are very, very Rolls-Royce. So rather than having high, medium, and low, we have soft, medium, high, maximum, etc. And then we have different fan speeds for each side. And then these little knobs allow us to choose the temperature. There's no temperature display. You just choose whether you want hot or cold and whether you want your feet to be warmer than your head. Very simple buttons right there. And then these are the controls for the heated and ventilated front seats. As you'd expect, the cup holders up front very easily accommodate large gray Poupon containers. This is what the Rolls-Royce key fob looks like. It's really heavy and it's a huge chunky key. A lot of things in here are styled very traditionally, just like those climate controls. This is the control for the infotainment system in the dashboard. That infotainment system is basically a Rolls-Royce version of BMW's iDrive system. We don't have Apple CarPlay in there, which I do think is a little bit disappointing. Obviously an analog clock there. No luxury car would be complete without one. They put the parking brake up here on the dashboard. That's also where we find the brake hold button and a traditional column shifter right there. These organ stop vents are really cool. So if I pull them all the way out, then that's the maximum airflow for these vents right here. But if I push them partially in, then some of the air gets sent out this vent right here for a softer dispersion of air. Same thing happens over there for the passenger. The steering wheel has even more teal going on and a lot of classic styling touches, like the way these buttons and knobs are done on the steering wheel. The instrument cluster is also quite classic. We have a big speedometer right there in the middle, and rather than a tachometer, we have a power reserve gauge. This sort of works in reverse. So if we're at idle, we have 100% of power available, and then if we start driving this more aggressively, that will drop down there towards 0. There's a small LCD below that, which primarily gives us things like the trip computer readout, the gear position, and of course turn-by-turn navigation directions. There's of course also a heads-up display, and then to the left of the steering wheel we still have these really chunky controls for the headlamps. Those are very classic Rolls-Royce look right there. Another air vent right there. And then instead of wood trim, we have sort of a carbon fiber thing going on here. Two-door vehicles are very rarely about the rear passengers, but this is definitely a different kind of coupe. You can see all the attention to detail. This is all leather right here on the back. And then we even have a tiny powered window right back there for the rear passengers. It moves in a very eccentric motion, as you can see. There's also a pretty reasonable amount of legroom back here. We have the same kind of lamb's wool rugs down there on the floor. Very similar vents to the front, so if I push that organ stop in a little bit, then air starts to come out this top vent to give it, again, a bit more of a diffuse air output. We can do that to either side. And rear passengers also get this sort of split zone climate control where you can have your feet a little bit warmer than your head. It's a little bit easier to see the trim in the car right back here in the back seats. We have an ashtray right there and then 2 cup holders, one smaller than the other. Those are really nicely damped as well. They close very smoothly. And in case you're wondering, yes, the rear seats do feature latch anchors for child seats. Rolls-Royce calls the Black Badge Wraith the most powerful and most dynamic Rolls-Royce in history. While I have little doubt this is true, Rolls-Royce is a brand whose history has been more focused on luxury than dynamism thus far. So it's important to keep the dimensions of the Wraith in mind. The wheelbase is 8 inches longer than a Chevy Tahoe, and it manages to weigh more than a base Chevy Tahoe as well. But the Wraith hides its bulk pretty well, wafting from 0 to 60 in a quick 4.1 seconds, and inexplicably stopping from 60 in an astonishing 110 feet. Driving the Wraith is sort of like watching your chubby house cat jump 6 feet in the air, grab their toy, and somehow land with the grace of a ballerina. It seems to defy physics. Until, of course, you encounter a corner, and then you realize that universal constants are indeed constants. Since it is rear-wheel drive, the Wraith still has the ability to be steered by your right foot, if you dare, and of course if there's nothing around to even think about scratching. The V12 is buttery smooth, intensely powerful, and almost completely silent, just as it should be. But this is a bit of a different creature than some of the options that you might be considering if you, of course, had $400,000 to spend. Let's be honest, dynamism isn't what the Rolls-Royce is about. If you wanted that sort of thing, then you might have bought something like a Bentley Continental GT, which does 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds and is much tidier on a track. The Rolls-Royce is about grace, elegance, and restraint. After all, noblesse oblige. This is the kind of car you buy when you want to know that you can embarrass that hooligan next to you at the stoplight in his low-rent Audi A8, but you wouldn't do that because you wouldn't want to disturb the peaceful pace of life within the cabin. But you could, if you really wanted to. Instead, piloting the Wraith is like lounging around in your favorite retreat, isolated from the world, and it doesn't really matter how fast the world is spinning around you. The suspension is firmer than the one that you'll find in the Rolls-Royce Phantom, but it's still eminently comfortable and very, very civilized, just as you'd expect in a Rolls-Royce. After all, even though this is a sporty Rolls-Royce, it's still a Rolls-Royce. The suspension will isolate you from everything you may encounter out there, whether it's washboard pavement or a stately gravel drive. Let's be honest though, the main thing you need to know about driving the Wraith is how much attention it garners out on the road. Everyone looks, everyone rubbernecks, cars swerve, drivers just move out of the way like you're tailgating them in a Freightliner because they want to see you pass them so they can look at the Rolls-Royce as well. That's what driving this out on the road is like. If you've made it this far in the video, thanks for watching, and of course a big thank you to Rolls-Royce for sending us the Black Badge Wraith for a weekend. It really is interesting to see how the other half lives, at least if just for a weekend or so. This car gets more looks than just about anything else out on the road. Every time I stopped somewhere, every time I parked it, people would come out of the woodwork, even in the middle of a global pandemic, masks on, clustering around the vehicle, wanting to know about it, wanting to know what it was. And of course, rationally, that's what cars that are this expensive are all about. They're about the look, they're about the presence, and of course about the luxury. And that really is what the Black Badge Wraith has in spades. I'll see all of you later. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of our latest videos. And I promise that we're not going to turn into one of those car channels that has a Rolls-Royce or a McLaren or a Ferrari every other weekend. I'll see all of you later.